Okay, so in this video, we're talking about the absolute value function and the distance function for CMU CS Academy's Python. And let's just kind of get right into it. We'll start with absolute value first. Absolute value is a function that you might have seen used in algebra or maybe in some other math classes. All it does is it takes some input of a number and it will output the positive version of that number. That's all it does. So if it takes in a positive 5, it'll give you back the same positive 5. Takes in a negative 3, it'll give you back the positive version of that 3. The way to do it in Python is we're just going to say ABS, and then in parentheses, like most functions, that's where we'll put our input. So I'll put 5. Now here, this is just going to calculate it, but we're not going to be able to see any result of it. So what I'm going to do really quick is just toss that absolute value into a print so that it will print out the absolute value. So the absolute value of 5, if we run this and check, it's going to print out a positive 5. If I try something like the absolute value of negative 3, like I said before, and I run this, well, the first print's still going to say 5, and the next one, it'll take the negative 3 and output a positive 3, and you can print that. That's about all it does. I guess the last thing I'll show is that, and this is where you can start seeing actual use in the absolute value function, is the idea is that there's certain things that you want to always have be positive. Maybe distances, maybe, just imagine, right? You can do whatever you want with programming. So it might be all sorts of things. And absolute value will just ignore, whatever positive or negative it is. It's just going to say, I'm just going to give you the positive value of this one. So this way, maybe you have an expression or you're taking, one thing in the canvas and another thing over there. You don't need to care about which one's further to the left or right, which one's up or down. It'll just always give you out a positive value. So maybe if I did something like 3 minus 5, well, I know this should be negative 2. And then because 3 minus 5 is negative 2, absolute value of negative 2, this should print out a positive 2. So we run this, it's going to print out a positive 2. It doesn't care, right? The idea of absolute value is I don't need to worry about putting it in the right order anymore because 5 minus 3, it's going to be the same thing. So that's just a little example of how absolute value might actually be a little bit useful. But we'll see examples later on as it goes. So that's absolute value. Next is distance. And to do the distance function, what you're going to do, let's make two things really quick. I'll make like a, ball equals circle at 200, 200 with a radius of 20. And then I'll make like green ball. And I'll make that a circle at 220, let's say 240, 200 with a radius of 20. And we'll make the fill equal green. So now all we've got so far over here is two balls kind of right next to each other. And what you can do is use distance to say, hey, I'll print it again just so that, we'll use distance again in an example later on actually using the values. But I'm just going to print the distance between the ball.center x, ball.center y. So you have to give a full set of coordinates. So it's going to be the distance between these two coordinates, this xy pair, and then the distance between another xy pair. So I'll say green ball dot center x. Oh man, I got to zoom out a little bit. And green ball dot center y. And now the the distance function will give me the distance between this first object, this xy, and then this second object, that xy. So let's run it and zoom in over here. And it told us that the distance was 40. Which maybe you're like, well, why would I want that? I can just subtract the two x's and it'll be a lot less writing. But what happens if I make the green ball instead of just 40 to the right in the x, or maybe changing up and down? What if it's diagonally far away from it? Maybe I make this 280. Now all of a sudden, you'd have to do the math yourself, use your Pythagorean theorem, hypotenuse, distance formula, which is just a derivation of it's just derived directly from Pythagorean theorem. You'd have to do all that geometry stuff to find the distance, but the distance function will just say, hey, the distance between these two, 89.4427, blah, 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 blah. It does all that work for you, so you won't need to do the math in there yourself. And I hope you can see immediately like, oh, this could be useful for all sorts of things. I feel like this video is long enough for a really simple idea, so I'm going to leave it there. There's definitely going to be a chance for some examples of seeing absolute value and distance in use, but for now, you saw an absolute value function in use, you saw distance being used. That's all we need. So again, absolute value takes in one number, will output, or an expression, and will output the positive version of the result of that expression or the positive version of that number. Distance will take a x1, y1, and see how far away that coordinate is from an x2, y2. That's it. I'm done.